How pressured was it?
I've never personally seen anything like it.
Oh, yeah. I mean, gun season in Wisconsin.
Yeah.
This is like opening. Yeah,
that's
like
the
opening
analogy
day,
I was looking
public
for.
land gun season in Wisconsin was very comparable.
And I've never been on as many of hunts and called in more hunters than we did on this hunt.
Gobble, gobble, we've got the band back together. We are doing a Nebraska turkey hunt recap, and in my opinion, personal opinion, this was a turkey hunt for the ages.
This was a banger.
It was.
This was good.
This was a banger.
That is the voice of Mr. Mike Wozniak. We've got Cooper Long to my right, Graham Cronin across from me, and also across from me, Erik Barber. So we got an extra full house today. I think well, no, we have one more headset. Should we invite somebody else? No, that's all the people that were here.
We got time. We can get someone else in
We
here.
could probably get somebody. They add a little bit.
Yeah.
Gentlemen, this was a fun one. So I'm gonna start with, I'm gonna paint the picture of how this started. This is a hunt that we filmed, right? That's why we have Mike and Coop here.
Where can they find it, Mark?
Well, they can find it on, well, Erik, you know what? You tell us where we can find it.
The Vortex Nation YouTube channel.
Darn right. So you're going to be able to see this in living color, not the old show in living color, which was quality programming, but this is going to be in living color on the Vortex Nation YouTube channel.
Shortly, today, it'll be available.
That quick?
Yep.
People are in for a treat.
They are.
This was a good one.
This is a really good one.
Now, so our initial plan here, or our plan was that Graham and I and Cooper and Mike were going to go to western Nebraska to chase Merriam's gobblers. Now, this is like my old stomping grounds because I used to live in Sidney, Nebraska, and I'd go up there, and I had all these nostalgic visions of what that spoiler alert, what that place used to be. We used to go up there.
Good call.
We used to have it to ourselves. Getting on birds was like usually not an issue. Tons of fun. The landscape was just like you could, hunt public land as far as the eye could see. And, since those days, which, time flies, I'm getting a little bit older, things have changed a little bit. Big fire came through a number of years ago. A lot of that landscape isn't covered with pine forest now. And I'd say the pressure's changed a little bit.
Slightly.
Fair.
A little bit.
So we road trip across the country, and Graham, maybe what are your perceptions? Because this was your first time to the Pine Ridge.
It was, correct. Yeah, and when we kind of initially came up with this idea that that's where we're going to go, we're going to chase Merriam's, I was, to say very excited would be an understatement. Because like growing up, I've only hunted Easterns here in Wisconsin. So getting a Merriam's was like on the bucket list, like let's do this, whatever it's going to take, we'll make it happen. But yeah, as you kind of alluded to, it was challenging.
It was challenging. But like the other point of this was like, we could have actually, turkey season was open in Wisconsin.
Mm-hmm.
We probably could have, been doing something here or not that far away. But there's nothing like a good road trip.
Yeah.
Like you
Road
just,
trip with the boys.
it just adds to it, And we definitely had, that's about 13, 14-hour drive for us.
Oh, yeah.
Like
It was,
that.
I think 14.
Yeah.
Maybe 15.
Probably about that.
1 or 2.
And we get there, and we had a bunch of pins dropped on various public. Now, I keep talking about this portion of the hunt within the context of myself, Graham, Mike, and Coop, and you're like, well, Erik? Where's Erik? Erik comes into play a little bit down the road when he
massively
saves
comes into play
the day. But so we get there, we get situated, we got just an amazing place to stay, super stoked. The country does look good. We actually see a couple birds on private.
I was going to say, driving up, we saw a huge flock of birds, a couple toms in there, so I'm thinking this is going to be a cakewalk.
Oh, yeah.
They weren't that far from public.
right off the road.
Oh, Anscombe's is going to be easy. We're going to pile them up day one.
The classic put and take.
Oh, yeah.
Catchable trout, as Erik likes to call them. So yeah, we get out, we hit the ground running. We've got a bunch of pins dropped. We've got some spots we're gonna, check out. And like I think initially the plan was like, hey, let's kind of cover some ground and just kind of get the lay of the land, check out some of these spots. Well, we very soon found out that we weren't the only people interested in hunting these birds.
It's very similar hunting styles. I feel like tactics.
So, Mike and Coop, like, what were your initial perceptions of the area? Because had you guys been up in that region before at all?
No, not even once. So, like, perception was like, driving there, like you said, like birds everywhere. But then when we get there, we see how many trucks in parking lots, guys, scouting around just like the same thing we're doing, and like stress level is getting a little higher, because on the camera side of things, you want it to be successful. I mean, as you guys do too, but it's just like, oh gosh, and then we get boots on the ground, and it's a little bit different.
I feel like like a tough hunt is fine, like it's a tough hunt, right?
Mm-hmm.
But when the amount of pressure and people are like what's making it a tough hunt, like it's almost like extra, I don't know, like that's the thing that I don't want it to make it a tough hunt.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I feel like it's already in most cases difficult enough to get on a bird. Then when you have many other hunters doing the same exact thing, it just adds a whole nother level of difficulty, I feel like.
Yeah. So
I feel like you got to even like put some context to what the pressure was, because like I've seen the footage and stuff like that, and anyone that's seen the film, which will drop, like we said, like later this evening, but like maybe talk a little bit about what that like, how pressured was it?
I've never personally seen anything like it.
Oh, I mean,
I'm
gun
called
season in
in
Wisconsin.
Yeah.
This is
Yeah,
like
that's
opening
the analogy
day
I was looking
public
for.
land gun season
Like,
in Wisconsin. It was very comparable.
And I've
Yeah.
never been on as many of hunts and called in more hunters than we did on this hunt.
Yeah.
Like multiple times hunters came into our calls.
Oh yeah, I mean we had it all. I mean picture like at every access point, right? Which the access points are pretty defined. Like every access point, multiple trucks at all times, and when one truck pulls out, another one pulls in.
Very quickly.
See, every pull-off we saw had at least probably 2 to 3 vehicles.
2 to
There
3,
was-
sometimes
yeah.
4.
There was one
Yeah.
point, I think it was that first morning, we were on a hillside, and we had kind of gone after a bird we heard in the distance, and we heard a door slam, and we looked down below us, and there was a camper full of hunters down there. So, yeah, it was pretty pressured.
Yeah, we just kind of like crept our way back into that area, and really that where they came in at was, I was like, where the heck did those guys come from? Because whatever like road that went back in there actually went in like a little ways. But we're trying to work that bird, and like, oh, what do you think we should do? Boom! We're like, oh,
Well,
hello.
new spot.
Did you guys hear him too?
But I mean, it was enough that I'd say it caused call for concern.
Mm-hmm.
Not that we couldn't have ground it out, been successful, but after a couple days of hitting the hills and trying to find different spots, and we definitely got back into some different cool spots.
I
Yeah,
was gonna say we
awesome
got on.
country.
We got on that one bird. The first morning we went up that ridge, and I mean, you called off, and like one sounded off, and we're like, all right, let's go. So we went back down, crossed, and nothing ended up coming of it. But there was definitely birds there, but I mean, exponential amount of people.
I didn't really think anything like when we first heard that bird and kind of went after it and lost track, let me shut up, and we ended up making our way back down, and strangely enough we ran into somebody to talk to. But we told him that we heard a gobble. We're like, oh yeah, we heard about, we're kind of sharing some information. He goes, oh, that's awesome that you guys heard one. And I was like, huh?
That's a red flag. And I think it'd be one thing too if we were hearing birds all over the place and there's still that amount of people, because at that point you're like, oh, we can probably make this work. There's enough birds for everybody. But when you're hearing 1 or 2 birds in the morning
that are
pretty far off,
and consistently being called that morning after morning after morning, when anywhere from 3 to 5 vehicles are parked at that spot, like it's just gonna be difficult.
Yeah, and you guys had another variable of weather being another kind of factor that was kind of coming into play.
Yeah, I mean, in some ways, we timed it perfectly to be there because we essentially just missed the giant storm that blew through. Because right before we got there, I mean, most of the roads in the area were shut down. Like, it was winter storm warnings. We were kind of like, watching the weather, and we definitely hit a window to be able to get there. But yeah, when we got there was actually a fair amount of snow on the ground. One area, actually, Graham and I were just talking about this. And, we're still trying to get our bearings a little bit, which I think is why we didn't go back in there. But we hit that one road that was essentially drifted in, right? It's like, no, we can't go any further. And it's like, and there was a piece of public that was probably, I'm going off memory right now, but like 2-3 miles in, we would have had to go. And now I'm almost like, if there was one spot that I feel like I wish we would have checked out, it was like that one, just because it was probably the only place that was a little bit untouched.
Right.
Yeah.
But no lack of birds on the private, and we knocked on a few doors too. Like we knocked on what, 4 doors, trying to get permission, and some nice folks. The one house I knocked on the door, It's basically they had a sign on the door that basically said, "Don't knock on my door." But
Yes.
And turkey tracks literally
in
everywhere.
front of
yeah,
the door.
there were turkey tracks like in the driveway.
There
Yeah.
was what?
200 birds behind the
Yeah.
house. Like,
Now,
Now, was that
amazing.
the house that butted up to the public?
Yep.
Yep.
That one.
Because I think
yeah.
the real telling point for me, and I think it was either the first or the second night we were there, we saw those birds on the private. You had gone and asked, obvious no, and we were like, well, let's just go see what those birds do that night. So we went back in there at night and kind of got on the property line to see if we could figure out where all those birds were going.
Might be a curious gobbler that wants to.
Well, that and I mean,
Cross the
it could
line.
just let us know like where they're roosting, if they are going to be playable on the public side in the morning. But all 10 hunters that were lined up on the same property line calling to these birds had the same idea, and that was kind of the final straw for me, where I'm like, I don't know if this is going to work.
How is this going to happen?
Now, meanwhile, during our struggle fest, we're texting with Erik, and it seems like every 5 minutes, we got one, got another one, got another one, got another one. They're dead
guys
birds
killing it
everywhere. So Erik, tell us a little bit about what you were doing, and how, in contrast, how your hunt was going.
So, yeah, that's the backing up even more. Like, you started by saying like we could have probably been hunting in Wisconsin. I drew a very late season tag in Wisconsin last year, so I couldn't have my Wisconsin hunting wouldn't have started until I think the first week of May. So I'm like, man, I got to start this a little bit earlier. So I hunted Iowa for the first week of their season, and then was back here for a little bit, and then wanted, turkey hunting is like my thing. So I wanted to get out again, and then went out with the identical draw guys. Basically the dates overlapped your guys' hunt perfectly.
They were identical.
No pun intended. And so I was hunting with those guys in a different area of the state, and we, to kind of give some context to that, so Nathan Thomas from Identical Draw wrote, a ton of letters to different private landowners in this area that they had a few contacts in. And I think that helped them a lot because they could actually name drop, we know this person, blah, blah, blah. So long story short, through writing, letters, seeking permission, they got access to a handful of really awesome properties in that area. And we ended up just kind of linking up for a week-long-ish turkey hunt that corresponded with the dates that you guys were out, in the western part of the state. And you guys obviously were battling the back end of that snowstorm. You guys, I know, had some crazy high winds a couple days too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And we just had a different weather pattern, obviously a drastically different change of hunting pressure where we were. And I think that obviously set the table for us to have good weather, low pressure birds. We were having a really good hunt. So, I think by the time that you guys had kind of finally come to where we were, which it was a 5-ish hour drive for you guys to get out there.
Yeah, it's 5 or 6.
Yeah.
So in the time that obviously you guys made that drive, and I think a couple days had gone by of you guys hunting the western part of the state with limited, obviously exactly. I think we'd killed at least 3 or potentially even 4 birds in that amount of time.
I think you guys were up to 4 birds at that point. Because I remember thinking, man, because you guys were like, hey, you kind of extended the invite, and I'm like, well, is there going to be anything left?
Congrats, but
yeah, exactly. So that's where those guys really come into play a lot here. Is they're like, hey, the more the merrier. We want to share turkey camp with everyone. So you guys all came out, and we had been hunting these properties and kind of had a pretty good idea of what the birds were doing, where they were at, that whole thing. So you guys came out. We synced up, I think, midday at a McDonald's.
Yep, McDonald's.
Yeah.
And we kicked off a pretty good tandem little turkey hunt there.
It was cool, and it just those guys to be so gracious to be like, oh yeah, why don't you guys come on out? This will be fun. Obviously, we were hunting their spots, and they got with the landowners and were like, hey, everything was on the up and up. It wasn't they asked the landowners, hey, can these guys come out? They're like, yeah, it's cool. It's good to go. So we met up with you guys, and I know Graham, we kind of split up. So Coop and I, first night, Coop and I split up, and actually, you know what? I think we did actually hit a piece of public that night.
Yeah, you did.
We did, yeah.
think we heard one gobble.
Yep, we heard a bird. It was like, I mean, it was like, oh, what's that unfamiliar sound?
What was that?
But I remember having like this exact thought, like throughout like the entire trip up until that point on that hunt. I go, now I finally feel like I'm hunting.
I remember you saying,
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Like up until that point, it was like just going through the motions. Like
For sure.
yeah, we're
Agreed.
here trying to figure this out. So
We
like,
were stressed. Like,
and you don't
Yeah.
want to get down, but you don't want to be down and negative, which I don't think none of us were ever like down or negative, but we're also like realistic with.
That's what I was gonna say.
what
Yeah,
was
just
going
realistic
on.
about
At
it.
some point, you
Absolutely.
have to be like, well,
Maybe it's time to move.
it's time to pull a plug. Let's go.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think that's actually, you hit the nail on the head. Like, I think that's a really important takeaway. Like, you could, take us out of the equation. You guys could have been hunting that area, and like, you guys knew it was time to pull the plug, whether it was coming to where we were. Just happened that you guys had myself out in that area, kind of as like an extra contact, whatever. So it obviously worked out good that way. But you guys probably would have made that same call and conclusion on your own that, hey, this just isn't going to work. I think that's a really, especially when you're hunting public ground like you guys were out in the western part of the state, just as important as it is to know when you want to really stick with a property, it's equally as important to know, hey, I got to bounce.
For sure, especially on them like limited time frame hunts.
Yeah.
like we had. At that point, I think we had
This
two
window.
2.5 days left to hunt. Like it's go time.
Yeah. I mean, that's a huge point. You have to. It's like
Be adaptable.
It's like being adaptable and like gauging like, okay, perseverance and flexibility.
And we talked about that a lot afterwards, because I think like if you were going to set that hunt up again, it wasn't the fault of the area of going out to the western part of the state at all. It was probably more in the logistics that we had set up on the front end of renting a place that, hey, this is going to be home base. That's great if you guys know that, like, yeah, this is going to be where we're at. But that totally flips on its head. Like, if you guys were just going out there, and the goal is, hey, we want to find birds, you're probably going to be set up totally different from like what your camping setup is. So rather than getting an Airbnb, you're probably either truck bed camping or, doing a day-to-day hotel thing, whatever, because that flexibility, like, that's key, whether you're hunting turkeys, whitetails, whatever. I mean, mobility is a huge aspect there. And that's hindsight looking back, I think we would have probably set up a little bit differently in terms of like, we wouldn't have done the Airbnb. We would have done some sort of like truck camp thing, which is what we were doing in the opposite side of the state. Yep.
And it's like nothing stays the same. Right. So in my head, I'm like, oh, dude, this is going to be great, but my mental snapshot was very different from like obviously what we experienced. Now, maybe, and we talked to guys that were out there killing birds, right? Like birds were getting killed, guys were finding success. So it's not like, oh, they're all gone, doom and gloom like that, But would do things a little bit differently had, we to do it over again. And like you said, Eric, is like, build in the ability to be flexible when you can, because you might need it.
I look up to our buddy Dave Owens a lot when it comes to turkey hunting, and the way that guy's whole setup is dialed in terms of mobility. I think a lot of guys that are hunting chasing turkeys on public ground can learn a lot from like what Dave's doing. And I think that's just applies into this really well.
For sure.
Yep. Yeah. His channel's pretty cool too, man.
Yeah.
I like what he's got going on.
Yeah. But then you guys ended up coming over to the eastern side of the state. You guys hunted some public that evening.
Yeah.
Got on a bird.
It was cool country. I think we saw, we got in a little battle with a hen.
Yep.
And jawed back and forth with her a little bit, and I was hoping she might peek her head over and have a gobbler in tow, but she never poked her head out.
And then I believe shortly after that, we also had another hunter come into our set too. The guy that came around, I'm pretty sure.
Oh yeah, there was another guy back in there. Wait, are you insinuating you think that was that guy?
No, I fully believe you that was actual hen, because we did. I feel like we did hear a gobble like far off in the distance, right?
Oh yeah, for sure.
Yep. But yeah, it was.
But it was cool. It was cool country. It felt very turkey-ish, and it was just like, it's hard to describe like the shift in like mindset of like, it's not like we're seeing turkeys everywhere or even hearing them, but you're just like, it was just a different vibe for sure.
Yeah.
So, and then Graham, you guys got into some birds that night, right?
We did.
Yeah, weren't we like on the way and a Tom like passed right behind the truck or right in front of the truck or something like that, and we're like, all right, let's just park and let's get right after it. I think so, right?
Yeah. So you and I went with Thomas from Identical Draw. He took us we went to a property kind of like that midday, like right after we met up with him.
Yeah.
And there was 2 Toms across the road from this property they had access to, so we kind of snuck in there, started calling a bit, couldn't strike anything up, and then finally decided to pull the plug there and go to our final evening sit. And we had a Tom gobble up pretty good and sneak in behind us, but just never came in for a shot. But it was a very refreshing from what we had just left.
There was some excitement in there too. I remember that. Yeah.
Oh yeah,
that was good,
there was a minute there where I thought it was going to happen, but. Yeah, I would take just hearing a gobble at that point after 2 days of very rough hunting.
Yeah.
And like you said, Graham, like we had numbers on our side at that point. We had obviously all of us, plus then I was with Nate, and we had kind of like branched off and went to a totally different area. We probably drove, I would say, 40-ish minutes from camp to a spot that was totally new. Like we hadn't hunted this at all. Like before you guys came out there, and we kind of went out there on a whim just to start putting the feelers out. We wanted to see if we could maybe roost something for that evening to get you guys at least something like for the next morning, like, hey, here's a course of action. Mm-hmm. So we went out to a different spot, and very different country than what we had been hunting the first couple days. This stuff was very open, but it did have some like little like, I guess pastures and brushy pastures and tree lines and stuff like that with big cottonwoods and whatnot kind of choked into it. And we ended up finding a bird that night and literally watched it fly up. And the cool thing about that open country is like we knew the tree that bird was in. So then that's when we got back with you guys. We relayed that information, kind of started coming up with a game plan for the next morning.
For the next morning. And I tell you what, like, at this point, I would take all the charity I could get. And when you were like, hey, we roosted a bird, you guys should go in and try and kill it in the morning. I was
you saw one?
What did it look like?
You saw Bigfoot?
They're real?
No, that was cool. And, like, yeah, the way you described it and stuff like that. And it's always interesting, because we hadn't been into that spot, so you guys are describing it, and we're looking at it, on Onyx, and like, oh, okay, like this here, this there, and it seemed like a really good plan. And the other thing you guys said, you're like, yeah, I think there might be more birds in there.
Yeah, but we didn't know. We thought maybe.
Right. There were.
There definitely were more birds in there.
So we meet up in the morning, kind of final game plan.
Yep.
You guys split off your way. Graham and I, Mike and Coop, we slip into this area, and those birds, like, they were gobbling so early.
We got there early, and when we stepped out of the truck, they were firing off.
Yep. Like, I thought we probably had 20 minutes until they'd say a peep, and it wasn't like a super long distance to get back into the spot.
But the hard part is a very open area we had to slip into to get near this tree line where they were roosted.
It was wide open.
Yeah.
Like you said, Eric, it was pasture and creek bottoms and things like that.
And I think you guys had some moonlight, too, working.
Sure.
It was bright.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Because I remember there's a point where we kind of stopped probably like a quarter or halfway through getting there, looking at each other like, what do we just back out on this completely? Because I don't know if we're going to sneak into where we need to.
Yeah.
Right.
We're definitely like a little bit of... last minute game plan.
I'd say like the part before brief panic sets in, you're like, all right, we got to go now because it's on.
Yeah.
Right.
But we were able to, like, you could kind of hear where the gobbles were coming from, and as gobbles plural, and we were kind of able to kind of do a wide loop and kind of get behind them a little bit. And
so
then
they gobbled before you guys even got set up then?
Dude, 100%.
Oh, okay.
I mean, before we stepped on the
30 seconds out
property,
the
they were
truck.
Wow.
firing off.
Holy cow.
But like I said, like, I was shocked. Like, it
'Cause
really,
we
like,
met at 4 o'clock that morning was when we met.
Yep.
And you guys had maybe only a 20-minute drive, so that puts those birds gobbling mega early.
Yeah. I mean, like, had there not been moonlight, it would have been pitch black.
Right.
For sure.
Yep.
I don't know, maybe the moon woke them up.
Well, I do think
I'm a big moon phase gobbler guy.
Oh. There's a podcast topic.
Yeah. Red moon gobblers.
Moonbirds.
But we kind of do swing wide, get a loop, then kind of creep in on the tree line, find a place to set, which is kind of interesting. You guys are trying to set up cameras and get everything set up, which is its own.
It's always a mess,
business.
but it always works out.
It does. It's always a mess.
Graham and I find a place to sit. I mean, the birds are firing off. I mean, they're close. Like, we snuck in. Like, we got in pretty tight to those birds without, getting them, bumping them out of the trees.
Oh, yeah.
So
I mean, I'd say we were less than 100 from their trees. I'd say one of you guys probably.
Like there was that. There was that.
I'd say even.
Yeah.
I'd
I
put
was being
closer to
generous by the
75.
100.
It was close.
Which because we're very sneaky.
Stealth.
But it was cool. I mean, you guys got set up and having never been in there, you don't know, it was an interesting little spot too, because really the only place to hide was in that creek bottom,
in that little ditch for sure.
In that
we
ditch.
kind of opted to just stay, 20 yards off that ditch, right?
Yeah.
And then set up by that big tree.
Yep.
And what made that challenging was there's that ag field, and it kind of dipped down.
Dropped off.
And then we sat kind of in that dip.
Right.
So you weren't perfectly level with it, which from a filming standpoint, I imagine made it challenging. And from a shooting standpoint, not ideal.
It was kind of good, though, from my angle. I was able to, you kind of mentioned we stayed back a little bit. I was, a little bit higher in the ditch. So as soon as those birds flew down, I was like, okay, I can see that there's many, many birds in here, and all we need is one.
Yes. Just one.
This one.
Just one.
I think it's important to note, Mark, you ran to get to the closest spot to the birds, too, so that was really cool.
Yeah, well, that wasn't an effort to cut you off, Graham.
No, that's what I mean. Yeah, it was a good move.
I just wanted to make you clear on what I was doing there. Apparently, it was obvious. No, I mean, but we talked about that, too. It's like, you sit here, well, if the birds come and do this, they do that,
Mm-hmm.
But we get set down, the birds are still firing off, and all of a sudden they start flying down. It's like, oh my gosh, there's a lot of birds in here. And how many hens? There were a ton of hens in there, but a string of them parade right in front of us at probably 35, 40 yards.
Well, I'd say that's kind of the interesting part, too, because these birds were roosting in trees kind of up on a hill above us, and there's that big creek bottom that ran in between us and them. And right away, it's hard to tell when we got there, right, because it was dark, but once the sun started popping up, you could kind of see how this terrain laid out. And the hens all flew down towards us, started parading across, and all the toms were on the other side when they flew down. And looking at that terrain, we were kind of, in my mind, I'm like, I don't think those toms are going to come over here. If they didn't fly down this way,
a little bit of a distance and a little bit of just terrain, to get through. I mean, they were all. We got footage of them right or up on that little knob right there.
That grassy
gobbling
knob.
their butts off, just going wild. And then that bearded hen, was in that string.
Ooh.
Bearded hen.
She had a
She
pretty
had beard on her.
She did.
But we weren't going to shoot her. That
No.
day.
We could see we had our eye on the
when you're talking about those toms, that the other thing that was interesting to me is that they did fly down like that, because when those hens came down and went right in front of us, I'm like, oh my gosh, this is automatic.
Perfect.
Another thing, as Eric would say, how many do you want? And I was firmly I thought that was exactly what was going to happen. I was like, oh my gosh, dude, there, multiple toms are going to be out here. This is going to be a bloodbath.
I thought the same thing too, because I remember kind of whispering over to you, hey, Mark, if when they come to let the first tom pass, because there's going to be a string of them just like we saw these hens come.
Exactly.
It's just going to be a big party, and we're invited.
And it was and it wasn't, because really, those hens came by, they came and went. The gobblers, like we talked about, flew to the other side of that little creek. It's what the heck are they doing? But they kind of stayed together, gobbled their heads off, and I couldn't see them at first because of it was pretty thick in that bottom. And then when they finally hit that little gap, it was almost like a little plateau that they decided to strut on. I was like, oh my gosh, there's a bunch of them, and they could see us too, from right there. It's like, oh man, that's not good.
Well,
so then I had to be really, really still.
That's what made me nervous, because when those hens passed, they kind of started circling back this way behind us, and I mean, we weren't in a great spot. We were fairly exposed.
Oh, him and I.
We were
zero
sitting ducks out there for
as
sure.
soon as they went around us,
tripod wide open. Lens out there.
I was looking at my watch. I'm like, we got limited time before this whole gig
We're
is
just
up.
gonna make it work.
Yeah.
But eventually, though, a lone hen, a straggler, starts working her way from the bottom, and she just hits the field. So I'm like, oh, geez, okay, we got one more coming. And what was behind her, Graham?
Oh, I think you know, Mark.
A big old gobbler.
Mm-hmm.
And this is another thing. You talk about the gig is up. So that hen works out. She gets in front of us, and the gobbler is just full strut. And he's taking his time. She was definitely, cutting harder in the field. And then all of a sudden, she wing twitches and putts and runs runs right by the gobbler. And I'm like, it's over. Like, I'm just like, all my hopes and dreams are crushed right now. Like,
and I thought I did that too, Marco. Like, I had that feeling like, oh, I just screwed up as a cameraman. She busted me. She got me good.
But I mean, like, it's just, it's the nature of the beast. But like, also, like, even though like I was so like, oh my gosh, this is not good. Like, somehow I was like, still in my head, like really positive, and I feel like that positivity somehow kept the gobbler like in the field because she ran back, like she passed him, like they literally like brushed wings, and he was like, "Nah, I think I'm gonna keep going that way."
You do you, but I'm gonna go this way.
Which I still don't understand that because at that point the rest of those parade hens were gone.
They were
out
gone.
They're out of
They're out of picture.
And I mean, we didn't have decoys out, so it's like, why was that Tom continuing to go that way? But
the only thing that I can think of is that was just like his routine, and he's like, "This is what I do, and I'm going to keep doing what I do until it stops working." And so so he just keeps coming, like he's kind of breaking into strut occasionally and cuts across.
Are you guys calling at him at all?
So that was the other thing too. Like we called a little bit right off the bat, and I'd say throughout, just trying to like take their temperature, keep them going, let them know that we're still here, sort of thing, but not a lot. And I'd say particularly when those gobblers got to that open space above us and could see us the whole time, like I just kind of went on lockdown.
Yeah,
and I think we might have called like a little bit when I'm trying to go back in my memory banks now. Like maybe called a little bit.
It was pretty limited, if any.
Yeah.
I think
they were
actually,
there.
I think
right
when
there.
I'd have to go back and watch the footage, but I think also like after that hen went back, I think we gave a couple just like soft yelps on the diaphragm, just be like, "Hey, there's still turkeys."
Because he was still
here.
hot too. He was gobbling coming across that field, so clearly didn't mess him up terribly bad for some reason.
Which maybe that was a key component, like saying like, yeah, she got nervous, but like, hey, everything's cool. Like we just kind of like it's almost like cow calling when you blow up a herd of elk and you're like, oh no, it was just other elk.
Yeah.
So I do remember that. I think we did give him just a little bit of soft stuff, and maybe that was it because he kept going. And I remember he worked out in front of me, Graham, because you were like more to my right.
Yep.
And I had my gun up, and I go, "You want me to kill him?" And Coop's like, "Yeah."
Like, now. Send it.
And we shot and we got him.
Got him.
We had a turkey in the bag.
Yeah. How far do you think the shot was?
I would put it like right at 40, I think.
I mean,
I'd agree.
Not extremely far by any means, but I mean, a little bit of a poke, a little bit.
It was a little bit of a poke, but I was definitely like I wasn't like, well, I hope this works.
Yeah,
sort
for
of
sure.
thing.
No.
Because
you and I had shot those shotgun to those TSS loads, and I think we shot them at 40. And we were both
and their pattern
feeling very good.
What were you guys shooting for a load and choke combo?
TSS 7s? I think they were 7s.
Maybe. I was shooting 9s, I think.
Maybe I was shooting 9s too. No, I was shooting 9s as well, actually.
Yeah.
I was shooting
shooting
7s before that hunt, and then, we were shooting 9s. So TSS 3-inch 9s.
Yep.
I'm a big fan of 3-inch turkey loads. I don't know.
Same.
I don't see a need for 3.5s personally.
Yeah. What choke then are you running?
Mine was a Carlson's, and it's done really well with a lot of other turkey loads. I think I could actually get something. I think I need to experiment with some different chokes.
I remember you saying that beforehand because if I remember right, you were thinking that you weren't getting the tight patterning that you thought you'd get out of TSS. Like it still was really, really good, but it wasn't like what you see on some of these videos of guys that are putting, a ridiculous amount of pellets in a 6-inch circle at 40, 50,
Exactly.
whatever.
Yeah, when it's at 40 yards, and you're like, did you throw a baseball through that target?
Right.
It wasn't like that. It was good.
It was a really
good enough,
confident
but
dead bird.
Yeah.
But so actually, that's honestly that's part of the fun hunting, right? It's like, okay, well, let's experiment with this a little bit, with some,
for sure.
different chokes and things like that, because I think it'll make a big difference. And I think your gun was definitely patterning a little bit better than mine. What choke were you running, Graham?
I was using a Jebs.
Okay.
Yep. The TSS choke, and we were shooting the same loads, but even that day when we went to go and just kind of confirm how we were patterning, mine was tighter than yours for whatever reason that was, and maybe it's just the choke with those specific loads out of your gun,
and I've shot that choke with nothing against that choke, right? I think it just kind of didn't like that the load that I was pushing through, because I've shot it with some other stuff, and it's just murder fest, right?
Yep.
But good enough to work. dropped the bird, a rather large turkey.
That was
a good
That was
bird.
a unit.
Yeah.
Like
He's a hammer.
he was like
Yeah, it had big old spurs on it too.
Yeah, oh yeah, it did.
big spurs, good rope on it, but like physically, like I'd say like notably a heavy bird. It's like, oh, this is a pretty damn big turkey.
Yeah.
But it felt good. It felt good get one under our belt.
Yeah, that was great.
I'll tell you on the camera guy side of it, half the stress was gone.
Oh.
We're like, we got a
Yeah.
bird.
Oh,
We're good.
Yeah. I remember the celebratory call, and like we were elated.
Yes.
that something good had happened.
Yes. We're due. We'd put in a little bit of time.
There's a little
Yeah.
bit of work done
Yeah.
for sure.
Oh yeah.
Anything, I'm trying to think, Graham, did I leave anything out?
Only one thing, Mark.
Oh, yeah, I know he's gone.
Do you want to talk about it or no?
No, I don't want to talk
All right,
about
that's
it.
fine. We'll
It's
talk
getting
about it.
brought up
It's
at this
too
point.
late.
You did it. You can't leave people hanging.
I kind of baited you into it anyway.
Yeah.
I thought that's what you're doing, but so I just remember. I mean, it was a glorious morning. Sun came up. Mark killed a bird.
Picture perfect.
And so, like I said, there's that egg field. We were kind of down in this slope, and as the sun came up, I noticed something of white porcelain sitting by Mark, and it was a toilet.
It was a toilet seat.
That was toilet
Graham.
No,
seat.
there was a toilet seat, but there also was a toilet that accompanied that seat a little bit farther down. And I had to capture the moment. You were running back with your bird. You were so proud. You're being sneaky
Yeah.
because we knew there were more toms. And in the frame, there's just a toilet seat.
Insert footage.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, it was great. It was
Go over
wonderful.
to the Vortex Nation podcast Instagram page.
You'll see
it.
Yeah, that'll be the behind the scenes footage.
Yeah. Extended cut.
Toilet bird.
So when you shot, when you shot the toilet bird, what
the toilet seat bird.
toilet seat bird? What did the other birds do? Because it sounds like there were more with them, but like, was it kind of it was over at that point?
You know, I mean, I think almost like by about that time, those other birds, at least it seemed to me, had like moved off and over the hill.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So like it actually is a little bit curious to me. Like it was almost like just like that one hen and gobbler were still left, just like doing their thing down in there.
Yeah, that is interesting. That's what makes me think a lot. Like back to the previous night, you know how we kind of said like,
right.
there's one bird in there. We don't really know what else is going on. You know, I wonder if, like, to your point, it wasn't just that one bird that was doing a very specific thing, maybe a subordinate bird, and who knows, maybe that's actually why he preferred this. Once that hen went the other way, why he still stuck with his game plan was because maybe he didn't want to go with that group of toms that's been whooping his butt for the past couple of weeks, you know?
Yeah, that could be it, too.
And the interesting thing is, it's not like there was a big chunk of timber at the top of that ridge. No. I mean, there was a large yardage gap between the top of that knob to the next section of timber, which is kind of a creek, just a long creek bed, right? And so it's like, where, did they take a left and go all the way down that far ridge, go to the next section of timber, do they go to this one, and make their way all the way across? It's not like there was a chunk of timber, 100 yards away.
No, they were going to cover some ground.
They were going
into
to have to
the
cover
next
some
piece
ground.
of cover.
Yeah.
Right.
And I feel like it like goes back to that, like the point you made earlier, Marco, about how like was that their route and that's what they did every day? Because after you shot, of course, in my head I'm thinking, okay, I know there's more birds over there, and so I look right over, like, maybe we'll get another one, and they didn't seem overly messed up by any sort of means. Like, there was a noise. Don't know what it was, but they were just going to work over the hill just like they already were kind of seeming to do anyways.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it really seemed like it couldn't have worked out better for killing a bird in there because, like, the other ones were none the wiser.
Yeah. Right.
I mean, they hear loud noises all the time, farm machinery, other gunshots from various things, thunder, whatever. Like, I don't think none of those birds were like something frightening happened over there.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
'Cause to that point, then they just kind of worked off over that hill, like you said, Mike, and then you went and grabbed your bird and you stayed low, right above the toilet seat. It was great. And then we're just kind of like, all right, should we go make a play on those birds, see what they're doing?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so we stashed the bird in the shade, thinking like, oh, yeah, he'll be good for a little bit. We'll go check on those other birds, and looped around and called a little bit, no response, and peeked our heads over the hill. And no response.
A coyote at
well,
that
I was going to
point.
say,
Yeah.
so yeah, what happened there? Because we kind of stayed put, and then you went over to crest the hill, so we didn't have like 20 guys, going over the hill.
So, and, it's always one of those things you always shoulda, woulda, coulda. Left my gun back because I'm just like, I'm just going to go up on top of this hill because it's wide open, right, and see where those birds went. Because I think they probably did what you said. They hit that creek bottom and just followed that wood line, which they had to cross some ground to do, but... So I went up on this knob.
A little bit of foreshadowing.
Yeah, I was going to say, a little foreshadowing
yeah,
coming here.
A little bit. glassed them, tried glassing down in there. Couldn't see anything, so I just tried, hitting the diaphragm call a little bit. And it was one of those things I had my binos up and out of my peripherals. I'm like, I thought I saw movement, and I take my binos down, and there's a coyote probably 50 yards, and he came in pretty darn close and skirted by me, but that's cool to see, but obviously didn't have my gun, couldn't do anything with it, but still a cool experience.
I remember, like, you kind of jammed up the hill, and I think I turned and I go, God, Graham didn't take his gun. I go, I always take my gun. And then you're like, then you get back, you're like, I totally could have shot a coyote up there.
Well, the weird part, too, is, like you'll see later, we were sitting I went to this top of this hill. There's wide open.
It's wide open.
I was just sitting there crouched down, and this coyote just skirted by me, and it wasn't until he got downwind of me until he spooked, but it was cool to see.
You got some footage of him, though.
Yeah, got some cell phone footage. It was cool.
And so that was that. Took stock of the morning, kind of what we had going on right there. Like, we knew there was other gobblers in the area. We also knew that it was getting warmer, and we wanted to take care of that bird. So we jammed back, met up with you, Eric, and Thomas and Nate at your turkey camp extraordinaire, which that was like a sweet.
That was awesome.
That was
cool.
cool.
It was a
cool
sweet little
spot.
spot. Yeah, it was fun. Like the truck bed style camping is like a fun, just like minimalistic. Like it's not as plush as like when you got like a spot to stay, but there's a part for it, and we got lucky with great weather. Like, it was perfect. It was a really fun camp.
Yeah, you kind of set up your new truck for that.
Yeah, yep. Yeah, we just had little like cot in the back, sleeping bag right there, just stayed right in the back. We didn't have tents or anything. They kind of had theirs set up the same way. But yeah, I think, I want to say Thomas shot a bird that morning. Someone shot a bird, because I remember we met up with you guys then, and we were taking pictures of another one. And then that's when you guys rolled in and kind of got caught up, got the whole story. And from there, I want to say, did we end up, I think that was like right at the end of what we kind of had blocked off, because those guys they host a new hunter turkey camp every year. Mm-hmm. And that was the week following when we were there. Mm-hmm. So they had some like final stuff that they were kind of like getting ready with that, making sure camp was ready and just some like final logistic type stuff. So we had kind of like, we were done at that point. So I think we just kind of like, hung out. I think we had like a quick like, cup of coffee or whatever, packed the trucks, talked to you guys, got a game plan for the evening. And then I think I left to go back to Wisconsin. Those guys went back home. And then you guys had, I think, that evening, and I think you had time for maybe the next morning too, right?
So we had the rest that day, and then, pretty much the next morning, maybe in the afternoon, if we really needed
overtime.
It. But it was cool getting back to your camp and just seeing, like, just the absolute mayhem that you guys had caused.
Fans on the tailgate, Spurs everywhere, beards everywhere. It was great.
Yeah, it was fun. It was a blast.
Yes, very literally. So that was cool. But that was neat. So you guys departed.
Yep.
So I guess our trips weren't identical because we basically had one extra day.
Yep.
But I we had obviously, I felt like our game plan was set. Like, we knew we had a few different options, right? Like, we could go around and chase those birds where we thought they might be. We also had high confidence where they might roost. And we decided to play the roost game and try and catch them on the way back and just kind of do some light calling and be in position. And it'd be interesting. You can, what if, sometimes I wonder, well, what if we did this or what if we did that? Because we kind of set up in a spot where that was, I guess, kind of up from where we thought they were going to, come from and go into roost, because we didn't want to completely blow out the roost. If they came back and something got fouled up, they spot us and they're like, yeah, this place isn't safe anymore. We're out of here.
Yep.
But we also kind of set up far enough that you're risking maybe not being in the game.
Yep.
And so it's one of those things where when should you push your chips in, right?
And I would say, though, I guess in my opinion, I feel like we probably made the best choice that night, because them birds did come back very late, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so we potentially, past shooting time, it would have been not.
Which
ideal,
is interesting because the bird that we roosted, that assuming you killed then that morning, that we saw that previous evening, I have footage on my cell phone of him like going up to roost. It was like 8:20. Like it was late. Like we were shocked that he was still on the ground. Like he was on the ground past legal shooting time. And usually I feel like they're in the tree well before. Yeah. Exactly. So that is interesting that night those birds were so late coming back to roost.
They came in late, and I think it's like had we been sitting like underneath where we thought they were going to fly up, he'd been like, well, maybe kill a bird or two, right?
And then camera lights becomes an issue at that point.
There's so many decisions you have to make when you have like two guys there's 2 hunters, 2 camera guys, like cameras here, cameras there, cameras
more
in
people
front
to
of
hide.
you. More people to hide. Like it's such a big, right. To influence the decisions you make, it's just you have to make the right ones, and the ones sometimes you just have to play the cards you're dealt.
And deal with consequences.
Yeah.
Right.
And did you guys know those? Like, obviously, you knew they were there from that morning, but did you know that, like, okay, we're set up where they're going to roost, roughly. We know they're right on the other side, or were you guys going off like a hunch? Like, did you guys physically see them and then backed off and set back up? Or were you kind of going off like, hey, we think they're there?
We were going off of where we heard them pitch down, and then from where we could the previous morning, and like so you heard them pitch down, and like you could see where they went up and strutted around. So like we knew like I guess probably within I'd say like a 40-yard radius of like kind of where they were probably going to go back up in.
And you ended up with a fairly close call then that evening.
I wouldn't say necessarily a close call. I mean, I think it could have been a close call if we set up differently, but they all kind of funneled in right down below us and flew up right where we thought they were going to go. Because when we went up to look for those birds after you shot yours earlier in the day, we walked kind of by that tree line. I mean, there was turkey sign.
That's what I was going to say, too.
Insane.
There was feathers. Track. I mean, you name it. So it was very clear that they were roosting very close to that.
Did you guys have a decoy out or anything that evening?
We did. Yeah, we had a Jake and a breeder hen out there. But yeah, they didn't seem too interested. One of the toms was kind of herding the group, and honestly, I think if we would have set up underneath the roost, I think we would have got busted. All those hens piled in first, and I mean that's a lot of eyeballs on us.
Yeah,
and I mean they would have been 5 to 10 yards away from us.
Yeah,
I think it would have been. We would have been very, very lucky to have a chance that night if we set up underneath the roost.
Yeah, it would have been, and like you guys said, you're trying to film it like. How does that go down?
Yeah.
I will say, and I'm glad you brought the decoy thing up, Eric, because we had that decoy set up, and we did have a couple birds come in, I guess from our right, actually kind of where I didn't expect birds to come from.
Like that wide open area.
And they came up, and they would peek their head up, and they didn't like the decoys.
Yeah.
Every bird, and you could tell they saw the decoys, and they're like, nah. And like that was curious to me because like, these birds shouldn't have been decoy shy.
Which is interesting too, because Nate and Tom, they were saying that the birds that we killed, we didn't kill any over a decoy. And I'll bring a decoy with me. Typically, my strategy is I bring like a super packable, like one of those Montana decoy, like 2-dimensional ones. Just because I'm usually running all over the place, but it like. I asked them, like, hey, should we, like, be setting this thing out? And they're like, no, we don't really hunt over decoys. Like, we typically find that they get boogered in that area with a decoy, which would not, like, that seems to kind of laugh in the face of open country turkey hunting.
Right.
Like, when I think hunting turkeys in open country, like, that is where I see decoys being critical, not something that you want to leave in the backpack or the truck, but that's exactly how those guys were hunting, and it seems like that's how it ended up panning out for you guys.
Yeah, and in the morning, like, we didn't set a decoy out. Like, there's no way
we did.
Wait, where did we set a decoy out?
Well, so
in the toilet seat.
In the toilet seat. It was there, Mark. You should have looked. No, but that night, so they all piled in. I mean, they were within probably, I don't know, again, I'd say probably 75 yards from us, if not closer. And sun went down, and we had those decoys out there, and we made the split decision just to leave the decoys.
Oh, yeah, we did. I forgot about that.
Oh, no, I was talking about when we killed the bird, though.
Your bird.
Yeah.
Yes, correct. There was no decoys there. Yep.
But yeah, so yeah, when they all went up, we're like, ee, which I didn't, I wasn't too concerned about that. But like you said, I found it interesting when they would see that decoy, they shied away from it.
So now explain what you guys were just talking about in the evening. You had decoys out, the birds flew up, you left the decoys in the field.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
that's
so
a
I think
good call.
it's important to note that there was a pile of birds. I mean, there was probably a dozen plus hens, probably I'd say 6 toms
At
in
least,
that
yeah.
group.
Yeah.
And
if
I don't
not
think there
more.
was any way.
And I think
anybody
there's
was
probably
sneaking out
some
there.
with
No.
how that terrain flew. I think there was probably some birds we didn't see fly up.
Yeah.
So there was a lot of birds. So we made the split decision, leave the decoys.
I think that's a really good call, to leave that decoy out overnight. I think a lot of guys get antsy in a situation like that. I mean, decoys, one, they're not cheap.
Yeah.
Two, you are now very married to that spot, by leaving those decoys out there. But I think it sounds like that was the right call.
Well, in any other situation, right? If you didn't have birds roosted there, you might not want to be married to that spot. But seeing the amount of birds there, we all looked at each other like we're coming back here first thing.
Yeah,
You
like
know,
the plan
not a
was
question.
like set in stone. Like
Right.
we know exactly what we're gonna do, where we're gonna be, and that decision, like it wasn't from a whatever. It'd have been much easier. Obviously, you don't want to spook those birds on the way out, so we didn't, and we left the decoys and snuck out. But it was quite the walk to
Oh, for sure.
to end around.
Yeah.
Like we had to basically go back out, not the way we went in.
Yeah.
And that was it wasn't like exceptionally far, but I guarantee it was,
It was a little track.
It was a hike.
mile and a half, something like
And
that.
didn't we have a hen or something roost like 40 yards behind us that night? So we were kind of thinking like, all right, let's just get out here as quiet as we can, type of thing.
Oh yeah, we could see her. I mean,
yeah,
that
she
one
was
hen,
pitched straight up.
So yeah, we crawl out, or we probably crawled about the first, 150, 200 yards out until we could kind of walk and get back out to the truck. And like we said, our plan was set in stone for the morning, and we sneak in. We actually snuck in the way we came out that night because there was no way you were going to get into those birds, going in the front door. And Graham, what did we hear when we got up when the night before there was like 100 turkeys roosted there?
Wah, wah, wah.
Nothing.
Zero.
They didn't gobble on the limb at all.
There were no birds.
There was no birds.
They were gone.
They were
Nothing
gone.
flew down out of there. So I don't know if something bumped them during the night, but
The
I
decoys
was-
spooked them.
So remember when we got there,
I mean,
though?
we pondered every idea.
Yeah, remember when we got there, the decoy was like zooted. I mean, it was not on its stake. Remember that?
What?
Yeah,
One
we
of
got
them
there,
was,
and the
yeah.
decoy
So I don't know if
wasn't
the
on
coyote
its
hit it or
stake. I don't know if the
something.
coyote must have
What a
tackled
plot
it.
twist. I
Yeah.
did not.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
who knows? I mean,
That is interesting.
but
you
still,
know,
I mean-
I didn't think about that. I was
Yeah.
thinking something bugged those
and
turkeys. It wasn't us.
And it wasn't like it was super windy that night,
No, and we
I
got
don't
in
know.
super. I mean, we were there probably an
Early.
hour and a half before sunup.
Oh yeah, we learned our lesson from those birds
Yeah.
the day before.
and knowing
These
how
birds-
close we were
the
like, we got to
early
get in
bird.
there.
We had the early birds.
They were the early
Yeah.
birds.
But yeah, I don't know what
Nothing.
spooked 20 plus birds out of that patch of woods during
Hens,
the night.
toms, all of
There
them are gone.
was
Not a bird.
nothing.
Nothing was in there.
And we heard
Wow.
one gobble while we were sitting there that morning, and that was,
yeah, it was
ooh,
A ways.
yeah,
a ways off.
Yeah.
On a different, it was interesting. It was almost like we had that creek bottom that ran through the middle, and then it was just like open, like almost like a big square block of mostly open pasture and grassland and things like that. And then like on the fringes of it, you'd find different pockets of trees or fingers
Right.
of trees, but it was kind of like more along the perimeter. So yeah, we heard a couple gobbles. I think there was two birds, two different birds, but way far away. So we spent the morning thinking, that's how we spent the morning. And then
Well, I think we were all a little dumbfounded, too.
Yeah.
I mean, in my mind, we were going to be back at the truck by 6:30, 7 o'clock. I was going to have two birds. You're going to shoot another one. We were good to go. We were packing up, heading home.
Sounds great.
Yeah.
that is great.
All in
Yeah, that was
anticipation for the grand finale.
So we hunt the rest of the property. We kind of chased those gobbles that we heard early on. Those birds shut up though. We never caught up to them. We grabbed a little bite to eat, and we worked our way through did a few other sets, and just a couple blind sets and likely spots, I see some turkey signs, some scratching.
I feel like we did good, road scouting too of that place. Like, kind of figured out where potentially these birds could be sneaking out, coming back.
Yep. And we went back in the afternoon, and we actually were, we had a game plan for that afternoon, but we're like, what, before we commit, let's do a drive-by around the perimeter of the property and see if we can, locate some birds, because obviously, seeing some birds is better than guessing at birds, right?
Yeah.
So I think our plan for that evening was basically the same plan as the previous evening and that morning was get to that spot, probably hug a little bit tighter to that roost tree and Hope for the best.
Just bank on them wanting to be back there again.
Because I think we talked, we're not going to call. We're not going to put decoys out. We're just going to sit underneath that roost tree, wait for them to come back.
Yeah. And judging from, like, we talked about there being turkey sign in this spot, Eric. Like, I've never seen turkey sign like this before. Like, where those birds were roosted, there was, like, a layer of, like, you'd be like, oh, that's dirt. It's like, no, like, that's like turkey droppings. Like, they lived there.
I mean,
they
I think
absolutely lived there.
I think that does go back to, like we said, when we first described that spot that you guys were in. Like, I've never turkey hunted in anything like that. I mean, I'm talking like the most open country that you can imagine. Very interspersed timber, like only in the creek bottoms. And when we're talking creek bottoms, like this is like they're not substantial at all. Like that, it's not quintessential turkey habitat.
I would say at its widest point, 100 yards.
Maybe.
You know, like real little stuff.
Yeah. So those birds, I mean, you guys obviously found their, where they're living.
They liked being there. So we do this loop, and we spot a couple gobblers and some cut corn. And we're like,
are these on the property or off?
Heading towards it.
Okay.
No, they were on.
No, they were on at this point. Yep.
Were they? Okay.
When we first spotted them, yep.
So when we first spotted them, they're on. We drive up, we didn't slow down, we didn't do anything, we're rapid game planning as we're driving. Don't slow down, don't look at them, don't make eye contact.
But very excited still.
And we get, I don't know, several half mile away at least, and pull over, and we're like, okay, let's go try and work these birds. So we get out, grab our gear. What, Eric? Why are you laughing?
Oh, I wish I would have been in that truck when you guys all drove past those birds. I can only imagine.
It was special. It was special.
Excitement levels were high.
Yeah.
And,
okay, so you guys are going in.
and they're at the kind of the bottom, right? So we go up this hill, go over the crest of that hill on the road, and then pull over. So we're not in the open,
right?
No.
Yeah.
We're hidden.
We're out of sight. We're far enough away. They're not gonna know what's going on.
But they were close to the road, so we knew that there was a sense of urgency. If before they crossed that road, we had to at least get close to them enough to try and call them or do something.
Try and do something. So. Yeah, we go through, like you said, like all that open pasture. I mean, we get to the kind of like a little bit of a brushy fence line where we have some concealment, but we can kind of see over the crest and look down in. And Graham, what we see there? I'm doing all the talking.
Yeah, so there was those two toms did end up crossing the road. We tried flashing a fan at them just to see if they'd bite on that, and they went ahead, proceeded to cross the road. But there was a hen that then came screaming from the other side of the road into that creek bottom on our side, and those two toms followed her right into that bottom. And so we knew that we had a good idea where they were going to head, because we figured they're, as open as it is, they're not going to just walk across all these fields. They're going to follow that creek bottom and probably follow it pretty close to where they were roosted that night before.
What I found super interesting, though, is like the hen came to our side of the creek bottom, and we kind of like called her in, and she took a hard look.
Yeah.
And the toms didn't follow her, though. Like, she stayed on this side. I mean, eventually she went back in, and then the toms
hit more
around
below,
on the other side. But like you said, we knew they were in there. We had a vector, a direction we thought they were going to head. And so our plan was to beat feet and get to a spot where we could head them off.
Yeah, and I think we kind of felt a little confident in that too, because we got there pretty early, if I remember right, that afternoon.
Mm-hmm.
So I think, in my mind at least, I was like, okay, we can make a play on these birds. If nothing happens, we're still going to have plenty of time to go get set up, knowing how late those birds got there the night before.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, we still, like, the whole time we had plan A in our hip pocket.
Yep.
And really, in some ways, we were on our way to getting to that spot. And, But yeah, so we run.
Oh, we were running.
Sprinted.
Oh, we were running. Yeah. And brought the cutoff.
I got a side ache. But
I was huffing and puffing. It was because I think when we mapped it out, it was about
a mile.
Was it?
Yeah, it was literally a mile, because I remember, like fast forward a little bit, I ran back to glass that one bird that was just staying there, and then it was back, and it was a mile for sure.
Yeah. That's right. Yeah, you did go back.
Yeah.
Because like we're waiting on him, like
waiting on him. So like I ran all the way back, crested right over the top, got eyes on him, and then ran back, and then was like, all right, buckle up, it's gonna happen.
Yeah, they were just taking their sweet turkey time.
Right, exactly.
And they did.
And so yeah, eventually we see them pop out. Not all of them at first, but you can see them down in there in the creek. They start working their way up the hillside. Graham, you had brought just a beautiful turkey fan with us if we needed to use it.
You know what, Mark?
Who mounted that for you?
That was a do-it-yourself job.
This is free on Craigslist, fan. Like literally. Free.
Okay, I had really good intentions with
Found
this
on
fan.
roadside, free turkey fan.
It was frozen for a long time.
It was flexible though. Remember, it was flexible.
Fairly. So my idea behind using this fan was I kind of dried it fan up so I could ply it down. But it was very stiff to ply down. So it was kind of a pain in the butt to hold. But, yeah, so we ran to this spot, and it was actually that same little knob where I called in that coyote the day before. And, I mean, green grass, middle wide open. So we sat behind this little fan, popped it open. We knew they were out there and just kind of sat there. And, I mean, it was... We
flashed it at them for a while. And I'll say, like, you know, before, like, I'd actually had a freezer incident. Not long before this turkey hunt, so I'd actually thrown out like 4 turkey fans. Luckily, my freezer is replenished with a bunch of turkey fans that I haven't done anything with yet either. But and so like before we left, we're like, you know, we're scrambling like, Graham, do you have a turkey fan? He's like, yeah, I got a fan. You know, so
I got one.
Thank God, thank goodness, you had that.
So stop knocking it.
I'm not knocking
it's
it.
Good
like
fan.
it was awesome.
You still have it?
No,
it concealed for
you retired it.
Man, it did.
It's very much it. Got beat up pretty good the rest of the year, so yeah.
Oh, did it? I was gonna say that'd be like my lucky turkey fan.
Yeah.
Again, foreshadowing.
Yeah.
It's a good one, but we'll have a better replacement.
There we go. I like that. Let's go use it again.
Deal.
So the birds, they work their way up. They kind of come out of the creek bottom. They're more in like there was like some cedars. It was kind of a little bit of mixed cedars and grassland and stuff like that, or pasture land. And they're not coming fast, but they are working our way, and you guys are up there, and like you said, you're just kind of flashing the fan, you know, just rotating it. 4 grown men are trying to hide behind it.
Well, I think it's important to know, you know, obviously we're on private land we had access to. We knew there's no other hunters there. We were in the middle of the wide open, so we were pretty comfortable.
360-degree view around us.
Yeah. We weren't close to any tree lines, so.
Yeah. And, you know, it's like going back to what's interesting, Eric, like you were talking about earlier, like, the decoys themselves weren't working in open country, but this apparently was.
But 4 grown men with a fan.
Yeah.
Who knows?
They didn't have any choice, though. They're like, well, certainly there wouldn't be a human being out there. Let alone 4. What, now, Coop, you were down, you were like a little bit below us.
Yep.
Like kind of like a little bit, not like over the roll,
just
of the
down
hill,
the
but
down
just,
the hillside
just,
a bit,
just down the hill a little bit. Graham and I were above, and like so, Graham and I have like a view of the birds. We kind of had like different, I guess, perspectives.
Yep, for
if
sure.
you will.
To the point where I couldn't see a lot of what Coop could see. Almost all of what Coop could see.
Correct.
So,
and I was stuck in the middle. So these birds get to what, like 100, 150 yards out.
Well, so when I originally saw them, I mean, I'd say they're probably a little farther than that, and one of the heads just went white.
Turned.
Yeah, just
color.
Poof.
And it was just one of those moments where it's like, okay, it's gonna happen.
And I feel like it's important to note, Graham, that at that point I said, hey, Graham, if I say turn left and shoot. So carry on, Marco.
Okay. So these birds like literally flip a switch. Like up until this point, they've been coming, but they're just kind of meandering and doing their regular turkey stuff. They start running. I'm like, oh my God.
And you guys, you can see them running.
I can see them running.
You can see them running.
So there's the top bird.
Different ones.
These guys, yeah. So
it's important to know where these birds are, like their position, like when they start.
Because there was one bird that I would say probably right down the pipe for Marco and Graham. That was the one that was sprinting right at us. And then in the meantime of us looking at that, which I think was also the bird that had that massive color change in his head. In the meantime of that, I look like down towards that creek bed more, and then there's 2 other toms that are full sprint ahead, coming right down the pipe to me, the guy without a gun.
So they kind of they kind of all started at the same time. The one bird took the high road. The other two took the little bit lower road. But this dude, and I can, this dude is because he went out of sight for a little bit. So we had the roll of the hill. So they run, they dip down in this bottom, but you just know it's a matter of time before this dude pops up. And when he pops up, he's going to be 10 yards. He's going to pop up in our face. And I hear Coop, I'm the middleman. It was like hearing, being, the child between your parents. And Coop's like, to the left, Graham, to the left, shoot, to the left, 2 huge
Graham,
goblins,
left,
to the left,
go.
left. But in my head, I'm not saying anything, but I'm like, Coop, you're also not seeing what we're seeing.
They were from me to Mike away, full strut coming in hot. It was insane.
Well, so, yeah, I was fixed on this bird. I'm like, Coop, you don't know what you're talking about. There's a bird right to the right, man. He's right here. And you had given me a GoPro mount to hold this fan because I was sitting there like this. So I had my shotgun in my right hand, this GoPro mount on a turkey fan like this, and just waiting for that bird on the right. And Coop's yelling at me, and I'm like,
they're going to step on me.
Oh, yeah. I'm like, oh, God, this is going to get really Western in a second. And sure enough, that bird coming from the right that was sprinting in, he comes in.
I mean, he popped up literally in line with your gun barrel.
Oh, I could have gone like this and probably hit him. Yeah. It was pretty close.
Fixed bayonets.
Yeah. But
he's charging.
so I try and drop the turkey fan, and it falls in front of my red dot.
You're like
because that was the day. It was super windy.
Yep.
And it was just blowing. I think,
windy.
honestly, that probably helped give some realism to that turkey fan, but it drops right in front of my red dot, and I'm sitting there trying to get it off so I can make this shot.
I couldn't really, and I was just watching the turkey, and I'm I killed that bird the day before, so I'm like, well, yeah, Graham, you need to shoot this turkey. But I'm I also don't know what's going on, and I don't know why Graham isn't shooting this turkey. Because all the while I'm
incident.
Graham, shoot this turkey, because I know via Cooper that there are 2 birds directly to my left that I want to shoot.
Yes.
But yeah, so I end up shooting that bird.
And I did whisper to you, I go, Graham, when you kill that bird,
You're gonna stand
I'm going to get up
Yep.
and kill one of the other ones.
Yeah.
And so we had that kind of
Oh, it's synchronized.
We had it
knew
sorted.
how it was going to go, and after you shot, I was going to stand up and.
You eventually shoot this bird, and it seems like it was taking forever. It was probably a matter of less than 3 seconds.
Yeah.
If you told me it was 3 hours, I would have believed you, because I mean your arms are sore from holding this fan and this gun, and then you're trying to drop it, and the fan's in the way, and it was a little chaotic. And then Coop's yelling at me that there's 2 more birds. But
and then I'm kind of crying. It's hard to see the red dot because now I'm crying because Coop's yelling at me.
But yeah, so I ended up finally settling the red dot on that one that came charging in from the right. Got him.
I mean, when you got I was there was no questions. You know how sometimes you're hey, let's stay on this one, make sure he's dead before we start. I was no, dude, this person's very dead right now. And I get up. And I'm a little excited. Now, the other 2 birds, the gig is up.
The gig's up.
They're now running, but they're well within range.
When you say they're running away, they're still probably at 10 yards when they turn their back to us.
And so I missed on the first shot, and then had a quick follow. And then, you'll be able to see in the footage, it was boom! And you just see 2 turkeys just thump, thump. And it was just amazing.
It was awesome.
It was one of the wildest turkey hunts I've ever been on.
One of the better endings I've ever had in a turkey hunt, for sure.
I mean, the level of excitement, I don't think I've ever been that excited killing. I get very excited killing birds, but I don't think I've ever been that excited.
That kill clip is probably the best one I've seen in a while.
Incredible. Then we all take off running.
I fell.
I was not going to say that. I was just going to say we all got up running.
I have to say it because I keep asking you to cut it out of the actual film,
it's
and
been
you won't.
approved.
It's approved. It's gone.
I refuse to remove the falling clip.
When stuff gets approved, we can't go back
Can't go
on
back.
it. It's the file becomes uneditable.
I think that's debatable. But
I think it's also important to note where Mike was during this whole situation.
Oh,
you were behind us.
Yeah, I was just in your back pocket essentially.
Yeah.
I mean, filming basically on hunter angle,
Right.
And then Coop is on animal, but just a freaking mess. I mean,
because I don't think you saw
I
that
didn't
bird
see
to the
anything.
right.
I literally didn't see anything. I saw one bird up top, and I'm like, oh, there's one bird coming.
Yeah.
Had no idea there was 2 more.
The whole herd was
Why
gone.
are they still shooting?
Yeah, I'm like, I could see, just dusted it, and it died in one shot. I'm like, what?
Well, because we ran down there, we're hooting and hollering, all excited, and finally, high-fiving, all that good stuff, and Mark's like, let's go get your other bird. I think you're like, There's another bird.
Like what? But yeah, it was.
It was
pretty
crazy.
awesome,
Like
It was honestly crazy.
It was one of the crazier innings to any turkey hunt.
Like
And it was
you
just
guys freaking out on camera was like probably like as a camera guy, you
Yeah.
probably can't ask for a better
No,
reaction.
like
to
that's all
anything.
you want to
Oh,
see.
I
That's
mean,
just phenomenal.
You would have thought there'd been, I mean, a bighorn sheep hunt, or whatever. Like,
I'll take this
just,
on
I
all
mean,
day, every
oh,
day. Yeah.
yeah.
That was awesome.
It was cool. It was a cool moment, and I think like part of what made it so cool was like just like the rocky rough, like from having a rocky rough start to like culminating in a moment like that.
Yeah.
Like I never seen 3 turkeys get shot. You know,
With 4 dudes behind one fan in the
And
middle of
just like-
1,000 acres of grass.
And just
Yeah. Watching them come in from that distance.
I was gonna say the anticipation
Yeah.
from watching them that long at that distance. Yeah.
Because most of the time, when people get eyes on birds, maybe they're 100, 150 yards
Right.
away in some timber, and, maybe they come in, maybe they don't. But being that wide open, I mean, they were probably 900 yards
I think
when we
I
first saw
remember
them.
960. I remember
Yeah.
like doing a Onyx line, and I
Yeah.
think it was
Yeah.
like 960, something like that.
Yeah, and just having eyes on them that whole time, and then all of a sudden, full-on sprint chaos breaks out, like, unbelievable.
And Eric, so we FaceTime,
Yeah.
we FaceTime you guy, and like, what was that like? Like,
So I'm at home. Like I had just gotten back the night before, and I have these iconic images. Like it's at 6:35 Central Time in Wisconsin, and I get a FaceTime from you guys, and I'm just assuming. I'm like, this is either really good or really bad. And I open the phone and I immediately take a screenshot, and this is what I see. Like all you guys looking into the phone, and every single person is talking, and it's like gusting wind.
Eric, guess what we did?
You're never gonna believe it. We got, and I'm like, what? What happened? And we'll have to post this. I mean, for anyone watching watching on YouTube, there it is. But yeah, I mean that was the moment then that you guys relayed this story to me, and I'm just like, I cannot believe
Yeah.
what happened, what I'm hearing.
It was unreal.
it was unreal.
There's birds, there's spent shell casings, there's guys freaking out. I mean, it had everything that you would want in a spring turkey hunt.
It was something, man.
Yeah, I mean,
It was
if you were there and you closed your eyes, you'd be like, oh, they're on a really nice duck hunt right now.
Yeah, it was cool. I mean, turkey hunting is just like so fun anyway,
Yeah,
and it
it
seems
is.
like all hunts are similar, but they all have their little differences and nuances, and like that terrain is just very unique terrain, like you were talking about earlier, Eric.
Yeah.
It's different, definitely very different than what we have around here.
Yeah.
With either bluff country or farmland or things like that. So
Definitely.
it was just cool to be in different country and to have it work out like that. I was not expecting that.
Yeah.
I was not expecting
Yeah.
that.
So I mean, if this sounds exciting to you, you need to, and you made it to this point in the podcast, you got to go to the YouTube
Yes,
Have to
channel
check it out.
to watch this in the flesh, because it is pretty epic.
For
Yes.
nothing else, just to watch Mark fall.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's I've been practicing my up downs though. Like
Yeah,
Oh.
dude, it was quick.
I was like,
I was there.
maybe
Oh,
they
yeah.
didn't see me land on
was
my
quick.
face.
It
I was
was
gonna say,
quick,
Marco,
man.
in your defense, you pop back up pretty darn quick.
Oh, the adrenaline.
Like, your
had
legs
to
didn't
be
stop
going.
moving. Like, you went down and you were still running and you just kind of got
Yeah.
back up.
We're gonna find like this whole video is like literally like people are gonna see like they're just gonna like skip to the fall.
Yeah.
And
They're
Like on YouTube.
Yeah,
they
you can
just
see the
play-
spike of the peak
I'm just like,
viewership.
oh
It's
yeah,
good,
they really replay this a lot.
We'll put that as a
happened to you?
chapter book, like Mark Falls.
Grown man eats it. Yeah, like that was. I've never fallen. Like
Really?
I swear with you guys, like it's the worst, man. You guys turn those cameras on, and like always something happens
it's
that's
your
like
fault. Good job.
never happened ever before. This never happens. I swear.
Yeah,
Um,
we're gonna get you. We're gonna get you a life alert next year. Falling and I can't get up.
It's embarrassing. It's embarrassing.
No,
it's cheap
no.
entertainment, Marco,
No,
and we
yeah.
love every second of it.
Yeah,
It's cheap
You
entertainment.
were excited.
everyone loves it.
Everybody, because it's not them, Eric. That's why.
Well,
Someone's got to do
It's
it.
much easier to point and laugh. I just want to point and laugh at somebody else.
Hey, we fall.
Yeah.
But it's just not on.
Yeah, you guys are always But no, it was a cool hunt, man. It was awesome
great.
sharing it, and like it was awesome sharing it with you guys, and just the camaraderie the whole time, and like the identical draw guys were amazing, and like the hunt got better the more people that we added, and like it was just like good reminders of what a lot of hunting is about.
Yeah,
and
I think that's the common theme with all these that we've done. Like this, I mean, it hasn't obviously been out yet, but the Alaska hunt that we had another conversation about, which will, keep your eyes peeled for a different podcast, different video. But that's coming. Like we keep going back to that at the end, and like it's the fun part of it, like the social, like you get a group of people together. I don't care what you're doing, and whether you're in Alaska or chasing turkeys in Nebraska, like your stoke level is pretty dang high either way.
Yep.
I absolutely agree.
Yep. So yeah, I appreciate it, guys. It was fun. Nice. And Mike, I'm gonna keep talking to you about maybe deleting that.
Slip him a 20 later. He might take it out.
It falls out of the bag at this point. So, enjoy the show, everybody. Awesome. Well, thanks everybody for listening to our turkey hunt recap. Hopefully, you're as excited about turkey hunting as we are after this trip, and maybe inspired to go hunt turkeys and hopefully not fall down yourself.
Get out there.
Yep.
Get out there. Thanks everybody for listening. We'll catch you on the next one.
Bye.
Bye.
There you have it, folks. Thank you very much for listening. As usual, give this video a like if you liked it, comment something below, and give us a subscribe to the Vortex Nation podcast channel. It would mean a lot to us. Also, why don't you give us a follow over on Instagram while you're at it, at Vortex Nation Podcast. We'd love to hear from you over there, and we'll keep you updated with all kinds of cool photos and videos from our adventures that we do here. Otherwise, we will see you on the next one. Thank you again. Happy hunting and shooting, everybody. Have a good one.